Hello everyone. This video presents a notable event that happened on each day from the past week in history. On February 4th, 1555, English clergyman John Rogers became the first martyr burned at the stake under the rule of Queen Mary I of England, known better as Bloody Mary. Rogers was a Protestant cleric in an England that had turned away from the Catholic Church under King Henry VIII. But when Henry's daughter Mary, a Catholic, assumed the throne in 1553, she did all she could to reinstall the supremacy of the Catholic Church and reverse the Reformation in England. During Mary's 5-year reign, at least 280 religious dissenters were burned at the stake as heretics, earning Mary her sanguineous nickname. When Mary was succeeded by her half-sister Elizabeth I, Elizabeth promptly established an English Protestant church that later became the Church of England, making Bloody Mary's killing spree for naught. On February 5, 1852, the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia was opened to the public. The largest art museum in the world by floor space, the Hermitage was established in 1764 by Empress Catherine the Great to house her massive art collection. The Hermitage ranks 6th in the world by number of annual visitors, and most lists of greatest museums include it on their honor roll. Other worthy contenders for the title of Greatest Museum would include the Louvre in Paris, the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., the British Museum in London, and the Prado in Madrid. Of course, other museums also stake a claim as the greatest, so we leave it to you to tell us which one you think is indeed the greatest. Note, among the truly great museums, the Smithsonian and the British Museum have the most eclectic collections and are not primarily art museums. On February 6, 1959, an engineer at Texas Instruments, Jack Kilby, filed for the first patent for the integrated circuit, a small piece of silicon with many circuits integrated on it, a device we know as the microchip. Incredibly smaller, faster, and cheaper than the circuits that came before the microchip, these little devices have become the backbone of the electronics industry and are found in all sorts of computers, mobile phones, automobiles, industrial machines, and home appliances. The metal oxide silicon that makes up the base material for the microchip is a semiconductor and gives us the silicon in Silicon Valley, the area of California near San Francisco that is the center of innovation and invention in the electronics field. The replacement for MOS microchips may be made of graphene, gallium nitride, or silicon carbide. On February 7, 1984, 2 astronauts from the Space Shuttle Challenger on mission STS-41B made space exploration history by taking the first untethered spacewalk outside of their spaceship. Not being attached by any sort of lifeline had to be a terrifying prospect, but astronauts Bruce McCandless II and Robert L. Stewart, both on their first spaceflight, operated outside the Challenger free of any safety line for over 5 hours. In 1972, President Richard Nixon announced the NASA Space Shuttle program, an ambitious program sadly remembered for the Challenger and Columbia disasters, but also a program that saw many space exploration firsts and carried astronauts from 16 different countries on 135 flights before being retired in 2011. On February 8, 1587, Mary Stuart, also known as Mary Queen of Scots or even Mary I of Scotland, was executed by the order of Queen Elizabeth I of England, her own cousin. Mary, born in December of 1542, was only 6 days old when she inherited the throne of Scotland and reigned for only 15 years before she was forced to abdicate after the murder of her husband, and Mary remarrying the main suspect in her husband's murder only a month after his acquittal for the murder. Failing to reclaim her throne, Mary fled to England, presumably to be protected by her cousin Elizabeth I. Alas, Elizabeth distrusted Mary and saw in the granddaughter of Henry VII a potential rival for the throne of England, and had Mary kept in confinement for over 18 years, until finally accusing Mary of plotting to murder Elizabeth, ultimately having the unlucky woman beheaded. On February 9th, 1907, the city of London was the scene of an epic civil rights march colloquially known as the Mud March, more correctly known as the United Procession of Women. It was at the time the largest demonstration in history for the cause of women's suffrage. Today we name a few others of the most famous or infamous marches. First, the Long March, 1934 to 1935, when Mao Zedong led Chinese Communist forces on an epic retreat by foot over the course of a year, walking about 5,600 miles on the trek. Second, the Bataan Death March, April 1942, when Japanese soldiers marched as many as 80,000 American and Filipino prisoners over 60 miles without food and water, killing as many as 18,000 of the prisoners along the way. Third and finally, the March on Washington, August 1963, when hundreds of thousands of Americans led by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. peacefully protested against racial segregation. On February 10, 1862, during the American Civil War, the Union fleet won the Battle of Elizabeth City, North Carolina, by sinking the Confederate Mosquito Fleet. So what is a Mosquito Fleet? Generally speaking, a Mosquito Fleet is an unofficial nickname for a fleet of small warships or gunboats. In the case of the Confederate Mosquito Fleet mentioned here, 5 gunboats and a single schooner. Other nations and navies have employed Mosquito fleets, ranging from commandeered private yachts used during the World Wars to converted fishing or utility vessels pressed into military service. A notable Mosquito fleet was the U.S. Navy's fleet of PT boats, fast and heavily armed small craft that could take on far larger vessels using their torpedoes. Future U.S. President John F. Kennedy famously skippered one of these PT boats. As a question for my students and subscribers, what Mosquito fleet do you find to be the most interesting or the greatest? As a question for my students and subscribers, which event from this past week in history would you most like to learn more about? Please let me know in the comment section below this video. If you liked this video and would like to receive notification of new videos, please feel welcome to subscribe to History and Headlines and become one of our patrons. Your viewership is much appreciated. For image, audio, and other credits and attributions for components of the individual videos in this compilation, please see the descriptions of their respective videos, which are linked to in this video's description.